one slide, I will show that and then talk along
Sure,
that.
sure.
Yeah.
I'll just give a brief introduction and then I'll ask you to present.
Okay.
Afternoon, good afternoon, delegates. We are coming into our last perspective for the day today. It is my honor to welcome Mr. Lasantha, President of AGMA Sri Lanka, the Agriculture Machinery Manufacturer Association, to give his viewpoints on the agri sector in Sri Lanka. Welcome, Mr. Lasantha.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Joseph, for the invitation and for the honor accorded to AGMA Sri Lanka to give its perspective. We are the closest neighbor to India, I suppose. Let me share one screen with you, just to put it on perspective. This elaborates the potential risks associated with agriculture in general, right? Particularly with the lockdown anticipated. We had a first wave, we managed to negotiate and control it, but we are now, since 2 weeks ago, we are beginning to see a resurgence of a second wave. And this time it has sort of spread a little bit further than what was seen last time, and there is some concern, but the government is taking full measures to definitely bring it under control. Now, a lockdown or a slowdown in quarantine procedures particularly affects agriculture in terms of logistics and transportation, and also the delayed inputs to agriculture, shortages of labor, trade gets interrupted, and then difficulties in farmers selling their produce, which leads to, food on one side being wasted, the other one being production getting affected. So naturally there is a social impact, a larger social impact as a result of food insecurity issues, income aspects affected to farmers, etc. Now, it's the credit goes to the government, of course, and the national leaders. When we first encountered and the country imposed a very stringent measures of lockdown in March this year, there were a lot of concerns that because there was a curfew imposed, so people could not, it was national, all island, nobody could move around. But the government took cognizance of the fact that people have to eat and people have to survive in the short run to overcome this challenge. So they gave priority to agriculture. In fact, agriculture and pharmaceuticals both are two sectors that were the minimal affected in Sri Lanka from a national perspective, because the government, in fact, even through the curfew, the farmers were allowed to freely move into their fields. They were provided with whatever inputs that were required. The input providers were told to open their shops to the farmers and to have those sent. And therefore, the damage to production, at the beginning, there was a slight disruption for about 10 days, but soon the government ensured that the mechanisms were in place so that farming and agriculture would move ahead without much of a disruption. So most of the distribution were done through the divisional secretariats, and lorry owners or small minor scale distributors were mobilized, were given curfew passes so that they could move freely from house to house, selling the produce to people, so people didn't have to go out in search of food, but the food was supplied. So these are some of the measures that the government took at the early stages. And this priority continued even after the curfews were removed and semi sort of restrictive measures were imposed. Government has today given a lot of priority for agriculture in Sri Lanka. One of the main points is to try and supplement most of our imports. There are certain imports that we still continue to make in terms of produce. We are close to self-sufficiency, if not self-sufficient in rice today. Occasionally, due to adverse weather conditions, there may be shortages, which is supplemented by through imports. But by and large, we are self-sufficient in rice. The other main crop the government has put on priority is maize, because maize is used both for fresh consumption and also for the poultry industry. So these two have been put on high priority gears. And on top of that, the government is now encouraging farmers to, there are 18 products that were identified by the government, and the farmers are being encouraged to grow these 18 crops in the country and to reduce the burden of, depending on imports. In terms of, we have some import restrictions in the country at the moment because of the slowdown in the exports. The country's foreign exchange earning mechanisms have slowed down. We have, one main contribution is from the apparel industry. The other main contribution is from tourism. And then we also have a lot of employment in the Middle East and also some parts in Europe where people are employed in those countries and those foreign exchange comes into the country. Now, all three areas are badly affected, tourism in particular, and also exports, not because our factories are not working, but simply because the export markets demand has become very sluggish. So to overcome this, short-term impasse, the government has now introduced some import restrictions, but to the credit of the government, they removed the restrictions on imports on agriculture machinery and spare parts for agriculture machinery. For example, at the moment, automobiles like cars, lorries, etc., cannot be imported. That has been stopped because that's a big exchange earner. But all agri-machinery inputs have been permitted to import agriculture machinery and also the necessary spare parts so that agriculture production can be kept alive and dynamic. Plus, there are other little incentives that have been offered to farmers. Another major input is bank financing. The government has introduced almost 50% subsidized loan schemes where interest rates are halved, if not even brought to 1/3 level, and given temporary facilities to overcome the present cash flow difficulties, if there are any. The government is also intervening in buying back, especially the paddy production, so that market prices are fairly stabilized and the farmers are kept happy. So all in all, potential of agriculture in this country is going to progress because the government firmly believes, and rightly so, that agriculture in Sri Lanka has to stay. Because we are a nation that is blessed with the sea around us. So fisheries is one major natural resource endowment that we have. And our soil conditions are so blessed that we can grow a variety of fruits, vegetables, pulses, seeds, spices, etc. For that particular reason, and rightly so, the government has put agriculture as a priority. They're promoting agribusiness ventures in the country. I suppose the more firmer policy decisions will be announced at the forthcoming budget in November. There are plans, there are discussions that we are holding with the industry at the moment, also to encourage the development of joint ventures with foreign firms, foreign manufacturers to manufacture small-scale agriculture machinery, not large machinery like combined harvesters or tractors, but smaller scale cultivators, weeders, etc. Because that way, partly we can add value locally. We can also develop the industry, and the foreign manufacturers also have an opportunity to get into Sri Lanka through partners in the joint ventures in Sri Lanka. So, anybody who is interested, you can contact me through AGMA. I will share my credentials with Mr. Joseph. You can get the email address from him. My mobile number is already with him. So through those, so those are some of the initiatives that the government is taking. And what I can say is, contrary to what we hear around the world, although we as a country, we as a nation is also facing similar threats with the COVID outbreak, it's still not out of the woods. But for agriculture, we have a very positive outlook. The government is very strongly backing the private sector and the farmers, encouraging to get into more and more high productivity agriculture to drive agribusiness to more productive levels. And therefore, the potential for agriculture is very good. And I would like to add, I mean, the market is still open, particularly for agri input. Uh, you know, we have some large conglomerates who are involved in this agribusiness. Plus, there are medium-scale companies. I would invite those who are interested to get in touch with us, get in touch with AGMA, get in touch with me. We can certainly start looking at options to move into this market, to develop agri-inputs, perhaps seed development, new formulates of fertilizer uh, manufacturing in Sri Lanka, uh, with partial contributions, technology being brought here. We have two large international airports. We have two large seaports today, both in south as well as in the west. So the required infrastructure is in place. Road development is quite well advanced now. Uh, what is required now is appropriate technology. I emphasize the term appropriate technology that can be brought into the country, which is economical, affordable, and works well within this framework of the country. There is opportunity for all of us. Thank you very much, and I wish this exhibition and your virtual exhibition all the best. Over to you, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lasanta, for that thoughtful insights on the agri sector in Sri Lanka. I'm sure many of our visitors and the industry would also be looking at a technology transfer program and a joint venture. We'll definitely also share these details across. I just wanted to just cross-check 2 points. One is you are told the Middle East, just like our state also, we have a lot of NRIs in Gulf countries. So have you seen influx of Gulf returnees, Sri Lankans coming back to their home country due to the COVID, their business loss? And is the agro and food processing sector one of the areas where they are looking into for starting a new business?
Yes, there is returning, but it's controlled by the government. They have been brought in stages. They have to go, there's a strict quarantine procedure here. 14 days quarantine under government inspection, and then soon after that, 14 days self-quarantine. So they are brought in batches and then released into the country. I mean, the flights are controlled by the government.
Right.
And there is potential, particularly if you look at the entire value chain of agriculture, there is a lot of potential for food processing in this country.
And do you have a nodal agriculture university in Sri Lanka, or is it in every district wise?
Well, we have several different universities across the country. Some of these universities do have, like, for example, the university in the Kandy district, Peradeniya University, is foremost in agriculture. There are a couple of other universities also that have agriculture as one of their main faculties. That's at the graduate level and upwards. Then we also have the vocational level, which is called the agriculture schools, which is vocational training. We have several schools spread throughout the country, and those agriculture diplomates. They are more hands-on guys who are trained through livestock, agriculture, etc.
Right. What we